What's up, boys? Valentine here. Today we have another very informational video for you, especially regarding the Paragon boards. A lot of people are confused around how to actually build these, how they work, what you should take, what you shouldn't take, what you should focus on. And today I'm going to clarify all of that for you. It's actually quite simple. You just need someone who knows all the numbers to explain it to you beforehand. And that's where I'll come in, because I do know all the numbers, or at least how all the numbers are supposed to work. And I'll tell you how it works for this Paragon board for Druid. And you can just extrapolate all of that information for your specific class as well, because it's very, very similar. So let's just get right into it. First, let's start with the first Paragon board. This one is always the same. You're going to be getting some flat damage. You always want to go for that. You'll see here it actually asks you to get a little bit of intelligence. You should have that by the time you hit level 50, so it shouldn't be that much of an issue, which will give you a flat 20% damage increase and 4% max health. It's really good. You want to go for all the damage nodes. That's an extra 10% damage for a total of 30% damage for very little cost. Next, you're going to be getting some extra health and armor. Obviously, you want to go for the armor. Armor is one of the most powerful stats in the game. This is where a lot of people get confused, though. The next one, because that's where the glyph comes in. And glyphs are overpowered as shit. That's one of the things that you have to keep in mind. If you're not one of the players who will rush to level 100 by grinding the same non-nightmare dungeon over and over again, then you will be building up a lot of glyph power. And if you've paid attention to your glyphs, I'm actually going to show you what my strongest glyph looks like. It's a level 15 glyph, and it gives me 73.7% damage while fortified. And you gain up to 10% damage reduction the more fortify you have. So this shit is absolutely broken. Your glyphs are one of the most important parts of these boards, and some of them are straight up build defining. For example, we have actually, I don't want to get into that detail. Just know there are build defining glyphs out there that you need to build your boards around, or specifically take a board in order to be able to equip them. We'll talk about that in just a second. For now, just take a good look at this. You see here, what this glyph does is it requires me to get 40 willpower on its red dots in order to activate it. And that means in order to activate one of these glyphs, the only way to do so in an efficient manner is to put it in a place where you can take both of the golden nodes in order to get a 10 willpower from them so you can activate it. That's how you activate your glyph, right? So as you can see here, I have the one that gives me 10 willpower here and 20% damage. And the only reason you ever want to pick one of the resistance to all elements ones is to get the 10 willpower out of them. And resistance to all elements and just resistance to any element in general is completely, well, not completely worthless. You still want to have it up to 50%. That's the cap. But after that cap, it's completely worthless. It's a non-existent stat. So you want to avoid it at all costs. That's why we only take it just straight up. We don't want to invest into anything here. We don't want any extra resistances. We just want to get the willpower out of it. That's the most important thing, because we get the willpower and we get 10% extra damage to vulnerable or crowd controlled enemies out of this glyph, which is very cheap because we always go for these anyways. Then as you can see here, I actually took an offset pass, taking the extra 5% damage, which these nodes you always want to get. Anything that says 5% extra damage and it's a blue node, you always want to get it because it's just a flat increase of your overall power. And we got lucky here because I could take this one as well, even though it's off the best path. And I took the willpower node here, which was very easy for me to take because this was here. So overall, these are very well built and they become intuitive the more you look into them. One of the things that I want to mention to you guys regarding the Paragon boards, though, in order for you to build it for your class, is that you do not really care too much about the legendary nodes. The legendary nodes are nice, but if they are not that good, if they're too conditional or too restrictive. For example, we have this one. While in Werber form, you deal 1% increased damage up to 50% for every 1% difference in current life percent between you and the enemy. Why would I need to take that? First of all, I don't even play Werber, so that's not no use to me. Second of all, it's not that big of an advantage, because if we look here, as I said, one single glyph activated to its full potential will give me 73.7% damage while fortified. As you can see, this one required me to get 25 intelligence. I got 49 intelligence. I went for every bit of intelligence that I could take on this board because the glyph would give me so much more damage. And I'm getting the intelligence out of it, so it's not like I'm wasting points. I'm getting intelligence that will activate my other rare nodes as well. So you always want to invest in your glyphs, and much less so in your legendary nodes, because they're just off the beaten path, of the best path. They require investment of several nodes and give very little payoff. 30% damage. Why would I take that when I have 30% damage right here with more things, right? Like, I have to consume 75 spirit, and then I'll get a buff that will give me 30% increased damage for 5 seconds. This is good if the build allows it, but my build doesn't consume spirit. But I still want these bonuses because they're absolutely broken. They're really, really good for my build. So even though I'm not using the legendary node from this Paragon board, I am using this, the 30% extra damage to core skills. That's really good. So naturally, you go for it. And these give so many more bonuses. For example, more willpower off of this one. I don't need the resistance to elements. As you can see, I avoided this one entirely because I don't need any extra and it doesn't benefit my glyph. So that's one reason to go for this board. It's because you can just avoid the little guy here, and it's asking me for intelligence, so I don't need the rare one. That's why I picked this board specifically, because it gives me all of the intelligence nodes for my glyph. So this is the way you want to pick your boards. You want to pick them around what is best for you, what would increase the most power. And if you know the numbers, if you know what you have to take in order to get the most out of your class, then it's very easy to pick the right Paragon board for your builds. And this will all come in time. The more you play your class, the more you experiment with your glyphs, the easier it'll be for you to pick the right board and pick the right build. So as I said, this one was heavily focused around me getting the most out of my glyph. Next, we have one that's actually useful to me with the legendary. Storm skills deal 30% increased critical strike damage against vulnerable or immobilized enemy. Now, there is something else that you have to keep in mind here. Look at how well this was positioned. I didn't want this. I have no use for lightning resistance, so I avoid it completely. And by avoiding it completely, I can go for 30% critical strike damage, 10% vulnerable damage. That's 10 times better than Thunderstruck ever will be, because it's actually consistent damage. And it's not just that, because I'm also getting this. That's another let me see here. Yeah, that's another 10% vulnerable damage. So it's more like 20% vulnerable damage and another, I don't know, 20 something, 22.5% critical strike damage. On top of the rare node, that's already helping me a lot. And all of this is possible because you're investing into all of these dexterity and willpower that allows you to activate these to make them 100% worth your time. And then, because it's somewhat useful and in my way, I can pick the legendary node as well, because why not, as I'm going into the next completely overpowered rare node. And that's the main thing that you have to keep in mind in regards to Paragon boards. The rare nodes are what you want to look at. So whenever you pick up one of these, oh, you don't give a shit about this. Who cares about this? I could pick this board. It's actually useful to me because I have a lot of crowd control. Again, slow is also crowd control, for those of you who didn't know. So slowed counts towards the crowd control modifier. So all of these stats, if I need another extra bit of damage, I can just pick this board, take oppress, take I don't know. Yeah, I guess oppress is pretty much the only general one. I could pick this board, take oppress, because it's general damage. It gives me 15% critical strike damage, which is actually 30% if you activate it, and 15% damage to crowd controlled enemies. I take this and that's all I need out of the board, and I just move on to another board. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see here. Let me show you guys another board here. So we got this one. 8% damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind, especially for people like me who are playing hardcore, is that damage reduction is very worthwhile. So for me, it was incredibly valuable to get this one. Even though I don't do much poison damage, I do poison enemies a little bit with every single one of my hits, meaning that I get a full value out of this all of the time. This allows me to activate another glyph as well, so it plays out really well. I also gain 10% damage reduction while in werewolf form. Another great addition for a hardcore build. I don't have this one leveled up at all, but I'm still getting 15% damage out of it on top of the damage reduction which I'm after. And imagine if I actually leveled it out, it would go up to 30, 45% damage, all without any further investment, just playing the game as it was naturally meant to be played. And it's great because later on, when we actually get the extra experience in Nightmare Dungeons, everybody will have the incentive to go in and actually level their glyphs. And the game's gonna flow a lot better. You're gonna get a lot more value out of your glyphs. Now, 20% damage to poisoned enemies. Again, I'm not a poison build. I don't do poison damage. I deal like 8% base damage out of a tornado tick. It's abysmal damage, but because I always poison enemies regardless, this glyph that deals 20% damage to poisoned enemies is very good. So I can still take it, I can still activate the glyph. It's really good in that sense. As you can see, we have a good selection of nodes that do general extra damage. As you can see, I'm getting a lot of value out of these. Even though they're not the best, I'm getting like 10% poison damage. That doesn't help me because I don't do a lot of poison damage, but I always poison. So I'm after the 20% damage to poison then. Get all of the value out of these as well. Avoid these ones, which give 5% poison damage. You just have to think about what your build actually does. And once you realize that, you always know what to go for next. Because the boards are very general. Let's say I'm gonna be attaching something. I don't know, let's go for this one. Let's say I got extra points and I wanna build my character to be stronger, to do more damage. What am I gonna get out of this one? Well, obviously I go for Bulwark because it's damage reduction while fortified. This is incredibly good. Damage reduction while fortified is one of the greatest defensive stats for a class that uses fortified, like Barbarian or Druid. Especially. Now, Spearhead, this gives me 50% damage to healthy enemies if I meet the requirement. I don't meet it right now, but that's why you have to plan these things ahead of time. Can I get the required intelligence to use it? I have a board here, that's like the last board that I attached, that I don't have the required dexterity for it, but I only need 40, meaning that somewhere down the line, I can figure out how to build an item, to find an item that gives me that extra 40 dexterity, which shouldn't be that difficult. I can just slap it on a trinket or something. And then, again, here, same thing. Just need 40%, not 40%, 40 extra dexterity. 10% shape-shifting skill damage, which would turn to 20% shape-shifting skill damage. Very good. And it's right at the limit. If I get to activate these, then that means my build is complete. I get 20% extra damage and some attack speed out of this. And another thing that you guys have to really keep in mind is the value of these stats right here. So these stats are a lot more valuable than you think. Besides being part of the base damage of your skills and your biggest modifier, what you have to keep in mind is that these stats also activate all of your rare nodes on your Paragon. So in reality, picking stats on your weapon is the most valuable thing you can do, because let's take a look at this weapon. 61% vulnerable damage, really good stat. 156 willpower. That's insane, because that will activate so many of my rare nodes. You go for stats everywhere. The more stats you have, the more of your Paragon board you can activate, and that's exactly what you want to do. You want to have your Paragon board fully activated. So yeah, that's how Paragon boards work. You can also tell which direction someone went on their Paragon board by the requirements of the rare nodes. So for example, you go down this path, you see these cost very little stats. It's because they're the first Paragon board that you get. Further you go, the more stats they cost, until eventually you reach a point where they cost insane amounts of stats, to the point where you can't even equip them anymore. You just get the base value, not the double bonus. So yeah, that's about all the information you need. It's not really a very complicated concept. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is your investment into stats to make sure you can activate as many of them as possible based on what you want out of those stats. And then you also need to keep in mind how much value are you getting out of that Paragon board? What are the best core stats for you? Like for me, because I use so many core skills, obviously I want to go for the one that gives me core attack power, right? Like I just spam Tornado, that's my build. So I want this board 100%. It's absolutely mandatory that I get this board because it's one of the best boards I can get with core skill damage. But I don't need Ancestral Guidance because I don't use Spirit, so it doesn't help me in the slightest. So I'm not choosing the board based on legendaries, I'm choosing the board based on the stats that I need. And that's how it's going to be for every single class out there. There might be some legendary nodes that will help you, but those are circumstantial, they're based around your class, and it's just something that you'll have to make a decision for yourself, in the same way you're building your character here with the items. Do you need that legendary node? That's what you have to ask yourself. Do you need it, or would you rather spend those points to get some extra damage? That's how it should work. And I hope I help you guys figure out the Paragon boards for yourselves, and you can just carry on and do it yourself. I'll be posting my Paragon board in the description down below if you're a druid trying to run the Tornado build, and maybe you guys can just inspire yourselves off of mine, just decision-making wise. Let me know if you guys have any more questions regarding the game or about Druid in particular that I can help you with, and I'll gladly make a video about it. In the meantime, I'll just keep spamming my own videos based on what I see people struggling with. And that was it from me today. See you guys next time.